Yeah, Kristen Guest is our guest today. Sorry.
Nice
Just like
alliteration,
we had
yeah.
4 guests yesterday, and just success stories. Hey, Kristen.
Welcome. Hi.
So,
Oops.
so I just sent you an updated.
I know, but I can't open it. We're already live.
Okay.
But what we could do, I could make it so that you could share your screen.
Yeah,
you
you can do
in
that.
fact, do that for the whole.
I had to go into the vault for old pictures of Griffin.
Oh my God. This will be fun. This will be so much fun.
That is awesome.
So I'm gonna give everyone a chance to kind of pile in. They're not used to us being on time.
It's sharing. Okay, so you can share now.
Yeah, but not yet.
Not yet.
Don't do it just yet.
No,
Let's everyone come on in, say hello. How are you all doing? And how many of you watched our previous interview with Kristen? I'm curious to see how many here watched the video we did. What year was that? 2019, 18, something like that?
Yeah, 18 or 19.
Do you remember?
It's been a while. Kristen, do you remember when we did the last interview with you for the course?
It was right. I think it was when you started the first course. I think it was part of the
2017, basically.
for that. I'm always impressed when people listen to the whole thing because it's really, really long.
It's an interesting story, and so many people can relate to it.
I've had so many people say that was the single biggest factor in them reframing their journey and inspiring them. And many people signed up to the courses because of watching this. They were like, wow, this is what I want to, this is how I want to work. This is how I want to train. It inspired them, but they also many people just shared that it inspired them. It helped them get out of a rut. It helped them reframe difficulties along the way, which is, I think, really valuable for all of us because it's inevitable. It happens to all of us. This isn't an easy path that we choose.
No, and well, I'm kind of naturally introverted and a little bit shy, but I feel like it's good to talk about this because I want people to know that you can be anybody. If you want to do it, you can find a way to do it. Because I was thinking of it this morning, like I don't have any of the natural aces. I don't have like a great eye. I don't have great feel. I'm not a great athlete. My only superpower is that, like I don't give up.
And you're smart. You're pretty smart.
Yeah.
That helps.
Yeah. But I mean, you were able to do something that's impossible for a lot of people, right? You were the prototypical adult amateur, right? With your little thoroughbred, and the trainers told you, sell the horse, get a good one, and you did, and that didn't work out, and that, so, you were in that spiral where people just get stuck forever, right? And you were able to somehow break out and, train a horse.
Well, and they also said, like, you'll never do it.
Exactly.
like I asked someone, it was at the first clinic that I went to with you, there was a really beautiful developing horse there. And I was just kind of like, like fangirl, like, oh my goodness, like that horse was beautiful. And anyway, I was kind of talking to the trainer and I said, like, how do you go from being, because I couldn't see how you crossed the gap from doing lower level stuff to being where I wanted to be. Like, and I was like, how do you get to FEI? How do you cross that gap? And she said, oh, you won't. She said, you'll never ride enough horses to be able to do that. And I was stabled next to her at the CDI last summer.
That's a great introduction. Awesome. Let's start.
Yeah.
Like,
that's great.
The old sound of the tape rewinding, right? Let's go all the way back and start at the beginning. Tell us where you started.
So I was, like most people, I guess I was, I rode when I was a kid, like a teenager. I lived in a I mean, I lived in a quarter horse heavy part of the world. So I did a little bit of that showing. I showed gaited horses for a little bit because my family was into that. But I never had any kind of systematic training in anything. It was just binder twine and duct tape and kind of flying by the seat of my pants. So I had, like there was some things that I could do, and I had tons of holes, and then I went to university and I stopped riding and I had to get my life going. So in my mid 30s, I had the job, I had the, like my life settled, and I wanted to start riding again, and I wanted to ride dressage. I'd been at the Royal Winter Fair in 1997, and I was watching Reiner Klimke warm up. He had Biotop, and he did an actual formal performance, which I also saw, but it was the warm up that just, I was like that. I want to do that because it was very soft, and he wasn't doing anything spectacular. He was riding he was just familiarizing with the arena, but he didn't train anything hard. He was just riding the horse around in a snaffle, and he was asking it questions. He was like, he would give, and then he would take, and he would give, and he would take. And it was just so beautiful. I was like, I wanted that. I want to do that. And so I was still in school at that point. So in the mid 2000s, I get myself set and I go looking for a horse, and I think I want a warm blood. And we look at all kinds of things, and and cost wasn't, I didn't have a ton of money. So we looked at a bunch of things, and then, like a dodo, I fall in love with a problematic off-track thoroughbred who's kind of dinged out at the, so they were trying him with hunters and it wasn't working. And so anyway, so I bought him, and
cue the picture of him now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I can.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, sure.
Let's look at a picture of him around that time.
Yeah.
That's great. That's perfect.
just a minute. Let me get back to. So. Okay. So sorry, it's not running as a. I should be better at this because I do it for a living.
There we go.
So the picture up at the top, that was like the first couple weeks that I had him.
Yeah.
And that's me and my junky crappy saddle.
That's where we all start, that's reality. That's the real raw truth.
Yeah. So it was me that not knowing anything and him not knowing anything and being really untrusting of, I think he'd had a not good time. And so, so we just kind of got to know each other, and we went out and showed a little bit. And the next slide is that, but this is sort of the collage of, this is where I ended up.
But let's maybe stop the share for a minute, and then let's talk about before we get what happened between you getting him and finding us, because there's
so I kind of started up, and I had Reiner Klimke's training of the young horse and Charles de Comfy's arena exercises, which was a really kind of, in retrospect, ridiculous combination, because de Comfy's arena exercises are actually quite demanding. So what was happening was, and Reiner Klimke's timetable for developing a young horse, I think, presupposes a very talented warm blood, because if you read at the back of the book, he's like, this is sort of the schedule we see them progressing on. And like, I was not anywhere near Reiner Klimke's progression. And then I was trying Charles de Comfy exercises, and my horse was responding by exploding and protesting. And, I didn't know why. So we kind of plugged along. And in the second year that I had him, we showed training level, and that was, it was highs and lows. We kind of did it in a no pressure way, but he was really explosive, and I didn't know why. So if he came out and had a good day, it would go smoothly. We were never spectacular, but if it was a bad day, he would just melt down and explode. you know, and then, so then I'd be in the trailer crying. And then the next year I went up to first level, and then it was just mostly crying. It was, you know, so things were happening. I didn't know why. I was working with a trainer at the time who was, in retrospect, you know, like a traditional, right? It was very bullying. I was working with clinicians that came up locally where I live, which is I'm very remote from any major centers. Like, it's for me to show my horse now. It's usually about a 10 to 12 hour trip to get to a showgrounds. It was 10 hours to get to the clinic I took with Thomas. So I didn't have a lot of choices. You know, so clinicians would come up, and they were either not taking me seriously. They would run me around in circles for an hour, and, you know, because they were there to train the real people, or you know, when I would start to get better, then they would go, oh, well, you know, like here, let's improve you. And anyway, one of them, she just like laced the flash on him. Like, so he was having, you know, like he was tense in his jaw, and she just like cranked the flash and tightened everything up. And he took it for 2 days, and then he wouldn't let anybody, like he wouldn't let me near his head. So I went, okay, that's not all right. So we backed up. I got rid of the nose band, the flat, like everything. I just reintroduced stuff. And I started to look at me, like, so when I lunged him, I watched him, and it's like, okay, he's not doing that when he's by himself. So I was like, oh, so, okay, probably this has to do with me. And I went to the person I was working with locally, and I said, like, okay, I'm not all right with us beating on him, but like, beat on me, like put me on the lunge line, give me lunge lessons, let's fix me. And, you know, nobody was really interested in that. Nobody was really interested in, I just want to ride better. Everybody understood the sentence, I want to win shows. Nobody understood, I want to learn how to do this, and I want to be, you know, competent at it. So, you know, so anyway, I got told he's never going to be any good, and you need to have a schoolmaster. So I went and got one. And that was, I learned a ton from him, but none of the things that you would expect. So what I learned was how really dreadfully you can destroy a horse. He was such a sweet, kind soul. He'd been competed. He was imported from the Netherlands, so he was spectacular looking, you know, like with beautiful gaits and a beautiful mind. But he had been imported, and he showed in Florida, and he'd basically been, like, his hock was ruined, and a lot of money had been spent to try to fix his hock, and it really couldn't be fixed. So he was kind of being, you know, passed along to somebody who would, I think be way outside the circle, so no one would see sort of what the after effect was with him. But anyway, so he came to me, and what I learned from working with him is how, I mean, it was pivotal. It was an important lesson, but it was that I could not go down that road. When I was showing quarter horses when I was younger, I made decisions based on, like, not liking that industry, you know, seeing what was happening to the horses and saying, I can't do that. And so with him, I kind of went, okay, I was looking for something different in dressage, and that road just isn't for me. So he had to retire, you know, fairly quickly. And so I had to go back to riding the horse that was unsuitable and, you know, was never going to go anywhere, because that was all I had. And, you know, so then I sort of hit this point where, okay, like there's nobody to work with me that can kind of work within the parameters that I need. I live far enough away that I don't have a lot of choice. You know, like the distance is just prohibitive. You know, so I was kind of in this summer of 2009, I'd planned that was about to go on sabbatical, and I would plan that was going to be my big year where it's like, we're going to be training, and I wanted to go and, like, you know, take a couple months and work with a trainer. And, you know, I had this plan, and it was like, my plan is in shambles. I'm like, none of this is happening. And possibly I'm just going to stop. I'm just going to say, your dream of doing this is not feasible. You just got to stop. You know, so that was very heartbreaking. But it's also, I think, like sometimes the moment when you are in the, like, when you're in the flames and you've crashed and burned and you think like, okay, that's it. It's over. That's just when you're getting started. So yeah, so that summer I had said, okay, I want to get as educated as I can this year. And so I had like no horse. And I was pretty sure that trying to find a trainer that would take me and my thoroughbred wasn't, you know, nobody was going to be turning cartwheels over that prospect. So, you know, because the warm blood would have opened doors because he knew the quality of it.
Sure.
So anyway, so I was, you know, sitting at my computer and I'm on this list of where they circulate things that are going on in the area, which for me is a very large area. So anyway, so I got an email that there's a farm in Edmonton and they were having a clinic and it was going to be on work in hand. And I was like, well, I don't really do work in hand, but the clinician had a very interesting resume. So that the clinician had worked with a lot of the people. Like I was like, I need to find my own Charles de Comfy, you know, kind of like that's what I need. And so that, you know, the clinician who is on the other screen here had background training with a lot of the people that I thought like, wow, that would be my dream thing.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I thought, you know, like, this is this is for upper level horses. This isn't me, you know, like that I've got a little crappy thoroughbred. I don't know anything, you know, this is going to be like a, you know, like an expensive FEI horse type kind of clinic. And so I just sort of let it pass.
Yeah.
And then it came around again.
That's funny.
It was like the email thing showed up again. And I went, okay, you know, like you said, you were going to learn things. You said you were going to, you know, you said you wanted to, here's an opportunity, put your horse on the trailer and go do it. And so I went out because I was like, I thought, okay, it's going to be work in hand. I don't know anything about that.
And it
but
was
like,
a how many hour trailer ride?
it's like 10 plus hours to get there. So it's
To ride with somebody you didn't know.
Yeah. in an in-hand clinic.
Yeah. Never done. Yeah.
I got there and it turned out that everybody was riding, but I was like, I went under the assumption that I would probably be, you know, like doing in-hand work. And I went out and bought a really crappy Cavison. So anyway, so I get there and I show up, you know, and it's like I'm sitting there with my notebook, like from 8 a.m. till whatever, writing down everything that Thomas says. And you know, and so I get on my horse and I have my lesson, and it was a 3-day clinic. And the first day, all we did was walk. He was watching me warm up kind of randomly and haphazardly. And like, so I go to my lesson and he says, how does he feel today? Or like, what are you feeling? And I was like, what do you mean? What are you asking?
He's never asked me that before.
I don't know what this question. I don't know what to
What's the right answer?
Yeah. Like I was like that. Nobody had ever asked me that before.
Right.
So I kind of, you know, did that. And anyway, so what he did was he put me on a lunge line. This is still, I recommend this to people all the time. It's one of the best, most enlightening things that's ever happened in my life. He put us on a lunge line that was attached to me, not the horse. So he clipped it on my boot and he said, I'm going to stand here in the middle and you're on a 20 meter circle and you are going to like walk around me and keep the line completely like no falling in, no falling out. The tension has to stay the same all around. That is brutally hard. brutally hard. So I'm like, just like it takes like you cannot do it with your hands. You can only do that with your entire body. So I'm like trying to get like, oh, like we're like a drunken sailor on the thing swerving around, and I'm like, okay, like, and it's taking all my attention, all my focus, all my everything. And while we're doing that, he starts teaching me stirrup stepping, which is a really like turned out to be a groundbreaking thing that I'd never heard of. And so while he's doing this, and I'm like trying to I'm like, what is he talking about? Like he's like, I want you to like step into the front foot. And I'm like, huh? So I go, now, step, now. So he's doing this while also like, no, you're losing tension. And so I'm trying to do these two things at once. Well, what happened was all this was going on, and I'm thinking, like, is this guy insane? Like, I've never heard anything like what is happening here? I don't know. But anyway, so we get to the end of the lesson, and all of a sudden I realize the horse is on the bit. Like, he's on the bit. He's, because the minute we finally got the bend, the geometry, got him like listening to my body and got us mapped a little bit onto each other. It was like just all the things that I'd been struggling with, because this horse had, he got explosive about the bit. Like, he had no real connection to the bit. He'd kind of either pose so that he didn't have to quite take the contact, or if you pushed him, if you unbalanced him in any way, he would explode. I learned that afterwards. But I mean, the minute that all those things started to get fixed, all of a sudden he was magically on the bit, and he was relaxed, and he was happy, and he was fine. So it hadn't been about picking on him. It was all of this picking on me had sort of created this thing that I couldn't engineer by this or, that. So that was probably one of the single most transformative hours of my life.
Yeah.
And, and it was done by like, the light bulbs went off, not because he was standing there telling me the light bulb was going to go off, but because when you put the horse in the right position, when you cover the geometry and the balance, what you get is exactly what you're looking for. And that's not an easy thing to get. It's incredibly challenging, but it's great. So yeah, so that was the first day. And then the second day we added trot in, but it was still like we were, not doing anything apparently very much. And then on the third day, he taught me flying changes.
Isn't that wild?
Because once you have like if you're willing to go back to that level of basicness,
that's right,
and that level of slowness, and get all those details right. So it was like, first we had the circle, and then we had the next day we trotted, and we did it was basic stuff, right? Like figure eights and voltas, like 20-meter circles and 10-meter circles, and, and around, getting him balanced and okay with that. Well, once we could do that, then it was just a matter of like adding in the small little things you had to do about changing the bend and getting him to move his quarters. And like, it was
shift weight.
It shift weight. It was just like all of the blocks went on in miniature in 3 days. And so I was like, okay, wow. And I remember like, I think the whole 10 hours home, my husband was driving, and I was just sitting there, my brain wheels I was like, oh my goodness, like what just happened there?
Right.
And so anyway, so based on that, I did something that I'm usually too shy to do. And I mean, I think a lot of people feel like, oh, I'm so small and insignificant. And I get like, so I emailed Thomas and Shana, and I said, can I come and train with you for a month or so? Like, so my crashed and burned plan for myself resurrected itself really quickly. And I thought, like, they're a big deal. They do these big clinics. They work with, like they're, like, they're not gonna say yes, but it was it just worked out. So,
and that was no big deal. That was a huge distance.
No, that was like 3 days of driving.
Yeah.
No.
And we lived in a camper for a month. My husband is a saint.
He's amazing. He's amazing.
So we moved down there, and we
wait.
Hold on a second, just to put things in perspective. So the clinic you had with me was untypical. That's not what I normally do. Yeah, but I got so kind of sucked into doing the basics, the balance, and explaining, footfall and this and that. And then before you knew it, an hour is gone. We've only walked. It's like, oh shit, she's never coming back if I don't do a little bit more interesting stuff.
But she loved that you only did walk.
I know. You're glad.
The time to just do walk.
takes a special
And you learn
student.
more in that lesson than probably any other lesson. That's the amazing thing.
Yeah, so then
Yeah.
next day, then I tried to step it up a little bit, right? And then on, on the third day, things were going so well, and the horse was so balanced. And we can't even remember what we did in detail, but when you say these figure eights and changes of direction, now you shift the weight, you change the bend. That's already 2/3 of a flying change, right? And then, when it was so smooth and it looked easy, then I thought, well, what the hell? That's canter. And it's like a test, right? See how good was our preparation? How far did we get with putting all the prerequisites in place? And we got lucky, and he did a flying change, right? And so I thought, oh, that makes up for the walk lesson in the beginning. So at least I gave you a little something, right? Because most people like to do a little, movements and things.
It was a pretty spectacular arc. But I mean, and so here's the thing, right? Like, so I had great takeaways from that, but 3 days was not enough for me to go home and become a flying change trainer on my own, right? So, so I got home, and me trying to kind of understand how to apply that in isolation from someone walking me through it and helping me with it. That was, like, understanding that it's there is one thing. Developing the toolbox to be able to start to diagnose it yourself, that was a long apprenticeship. So
to make it your own, to recreate the magic on your own, that's a whole other level.
Takes a while.
Yeah. And I honestly think that the course that developed kind of, I mean, I think I played some small part in this because of part of the story that happens next is, but I think the thing that the course provides that I didn't have at that time, like having actual access to Thomas, is amazing.
Right, you're actually
having him as your
sorry, for those not aware, you're referencing our online course. So that's jumping way ahead. We have an online course then. We have one now, but that's what you're referencing.
Yeah. So I mean, so between I show up in Eugene, Oregon to ride with you, and 2017, what happens is all of that, like not just the Thomas walking you through it, but the fleshing out, the articulating of the theory, and the putting it into blocks where you can sort of follow the steps at home, that that was a big add, because I wouldn't have magically transformed after 3 days.
So
and even after a month. So I head down to you.
Yeah.
Let's stay chronological as much as we can.
But in just thinking about it and hearing you tell the story again, I was thinking, like, when you came to us, we almost did the same thing as in the clinic, but just more in depth, like taking everything apart.
We did.
And putting it together again, right?
We did, yeah.
So, and starting with
literally.
Yeah.
And it was you actually had it, like, so you said, like, the first week we're going to look at the horse, the second week we're going to look at you, the third week we're going to like, we're going to start putting you back together, and then kind of get you ready to go home. And it was funny. So and me going home was timed out with Shana was, like, in all the pictures it's Thomas, Shana, and Dylan, because she's like about to give birth the whole time.
Share the picture again. That's pretty funny. If you want to share the screen.
So
do you want to share the screen again, Kristen? Because now we can look at the pictures of when you were there. So these pictures are they're fairly interesting, right?
Right, yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's
see the red bulge. That's Dylan, our son.
So so in the picture of Thomas and Shana adjusting me, that's I'm having seat lessons. That was week 2. And that was really interesting because I have I guess a perverse enjoyment out of, like, clinic lessons that only walk, or because that the second week where we were sussing out me, basically I was completely taken apart and completely put back together again.
Yes, you were.
And the hilarious outcome of that was that in week 3, I was unable to do basic things. Like, my body was so defamiliarized from itself that I couldn't make my horse, like, I couldn't walk on the bit. I couldn't do anything.
Your habitual patterns were all gone. So you had to develop new neurological patterns. So
yeah, so
that's
it was just a mess. And at one point, Thomas was, he had the lunge line sort of around my waist, and he was working the horse in hand with me sitting on it, with my hands on it, so that I could sort of feel what was happening. And it was like, like a normal person would probably have freaked out at that point, but I was just, I don't know, I just trusted the process, and it was just so, it's what I'd been looking for. I was like, take me apart, like do whatever you got to do. And so it was actually exhilarating rather than awful. And so, yeah, so we did that. And then I was supposed to take the horse, to take him home. And I was also, because I went to the Netherlands. That's another story. But
you could stop sharing for a second.
Yeah, you can
so
stop sharing so we
better.
can see your face.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
We'll go back to that and talk about the other photos there in a little bit. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So
anyway, we sort of decided that two things kind of out of that. One was that the horse would stay with Thomas and Shana, because I was going to be away for a chunk of time, and then I would come back and collect him in January, because it was almost November at that point. And the other thing was, someone else that was working with Thomas was doing lessons by distance. It wasn't really a thing the way it is now. So he was like, "Oh, I have to go teach a Skype lesson," and I was like, "What do you mean? What's that?" And he said, "Well, and I said, "That's the thing, you could do that?" And he said, "Yeah." And I was like, "Could I do that? Would you do that with me?" And and he said, "Yeah, okay." So I, like, that day I went out and bought started buying the components that you needed to do this.
This was in 2009, you guys.
Yeah, it wasn't like there wasn't it wasn't kits. It was you had to,
before all the cool kids were doing it.
You had to jimmy rig things together on your own. So anyway, so the horse came home and we started working together once a week, and we did that for over 10 years. And yeah, so over that apprenticeship, that was the long version of the clinic. That was helping me work through some of the big stuff with my horse. There was sometimes you do think, you implement things, and you might get you might get an immediate good response, or you might get, like within a couple of days, you might get a good response. This horse was like, he would say no, 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 no. Like it would go on and on and on forever. And then one day he'd just go, "Okay, yeah, I'll do it." So it was like that with everything. It was being on the bit, being okay with you moving his balance around. He was very not trustful of that, because I think he'd been I think his perspective was totally valid, which is that he'd been used and abused. No one had respected him or his well-being or his balance or anything, and so he was doing what was logical and what anybody would do under the circumstances that was smart. He was protecting himself, so he had to learn that it was okay to trust things, and that took a really long time. And then it was like, and anytime you wanted to change his balance, so it's like you get him going like circles and basic things, and then like adding lateral work, he went no for lateral work for a really long time. And then and so it was just we just sort of pegged away at that faithfully. But what was hilarious is that eventually, so it was that was 2009. By 2012, I remember having a lesson with Thomas, and we were riding around on the horse, but he felt really good. And we were cantering, and I said, "Wow, he feels like an advanced horse." And Thomas said, "Well, he is. He's an advanced horse." Because we were, at that point, we were doing the components. We couldn't sort of string them all together. He never became a horse out of this. He had personal feelings about I think about being used for people's vanity. Anyway, he just didn't want, he was totally fine with I will help, our deal was, I will help you learn everything you can learn. And he was great at that, because he would like anything I was doing wrong, he would like highlight and, like, he'd like, she's not doing this right. Like he would, so he was the opposite of what a schoolmaster is supposed to be, but an incredibly great schoolmaster, because he was not easy. He made you get it right. He made you establish trust. He would always like, I like when I was showing him, it was really funny, because the comments that I always get was, that he was like a wonderful little horse, and the rider was like, rider must, or rider is missing these things. And I was like, do you know how hard he is to ride? Like he's, but he sort of helped me with that. And, and so by the end of it, we were doing the start, he could do half pirouettes, he could do flying changes, we were starting series changes, he could do zigzags. Someone's asking how old he was. So he was 7 when I got him. He'd been on the track. He'd never raced, but he'd been at the track. And, so basically started as a yearling or an early 2-year-old. He'd been taken into a hunter barn for a couple of years after that. And so he was 7, when we started things. It was 2005. So it was like, he was probably 9 or 10 when we started with Thomas and Shana.
Yeah.
No, because he was born in 98. So he was 11 when we started with Thomas and Shana. And by the so within 2 years at that age, with a lot of baggage, and something that came up afterwards, it wasn't visible at the time, but I think he'd had a knee injury, because as he aged, he started to thicken in his knee, and that was eventually why we retired him. He retired kind of early. He was 14 or 15 when I decided. He was starting to. It was getting harder and harder to supple him, and his knee was visibly starting. At that point, I'd been told by a vet that that his arthritis was accelerating, and so I just decided he's helped me do everything I need to do, and so he can retire. And in his he didn't start at a sane age, like he wasn't started as a 4-year-old and sensibly developed. He was galloped as a 2-year-old. So but he was so within the 2 or 3 years that we had, the first year was a lot of breaking rocks and digging holes, and then it kind of moved along, and he helped me get started on a lot of the big stuff. And then, so do you want the second part?
Yeah, but maybe we should look at those pictures again and explain what's going on in those pictures with Griffin, because I'm sure a lot of people are wondering what is going on there. Right. That picture, the one on the left.
He had very poor body awareness, was my feeling when I met him, and the paw was pretty locked and the base of the neck was wobbly, right? So that's why we decided to put a cabochon on him and a set of draw reins. I know they have a really bad reputation, but we used them just to stabilize the base of the neck, basically, not to create a frame or anything, just to prevent him from wiggling at the base of the neck, so we could access the pole with the snaffle, basically.
And Thomas writes about this in his book, for those of you that are curious for more information about it. In fact, you'll find this exact picture in that book, because not very many trainers will talk about this method of stabilizing the horse with use of draw reins. Usually draw reins, right, are used to just crank and pull the horse down, but when you use them with the cabochon in this way, it actually instead stabilizes the horse and helps to frame the horse and connect the horse better. And so it's not about bringing the horse's head down at all. In fact, it doesn't do that.
It's a technique that the Spanish riding school in Vienna used to practice to prepare horses for the double bridle, and we learned it from Carl Mikolka, actually. And I was totally fascinated by it. So that's why for a while there I kind of researched it and I played with it. And
that's what we did with everything. We would just research it obsessively.
Because I wanted to find out how it works and what happens, and how does it affect the horse. And For Griffin, I felt like it was very useful. It almost like connected him in his body more. That there was a feeling I get that feeling the the three reins on each side just touching him. I felt like that gave him a better sense of his body. Or Kristen, what do you think?
Yeah, so for me, one of the things that it did, I think it did everything you're saying, but also because he had a terrible relationship to the bit.
Yeah.
So getting like, because we didn't jump to this as the first thing, but it was like he just didn't like, could not trust the connection. But he was fine if you got it the minute that you left the bit out of it, like, so going to his note, like riding off the cavesson, he was totally happy about that. Like he was, like he was like, sure, fine. I have no negative associations with that. So if you can see, he's kind of reaching into it there a little bit. So, and what's going on in the picture is I'm riding with the cavesson as if it was the snaffle, and the snaffle as if it was the curb. So the snaffle was kind of always in there, but it was playing a very minor kind of, it was just sort of in the background. Over time, what happened was we just shifted the balance. So when we came, eventually he learned to trust the snaffle and had quite a nice connection. And then the cavesson wasn't necessary anymore. So it was a way to kind of resensitize him or reintroduce him to the bit, while getting the training done that needed to happen in order for him to be able to be convinced that the bit was not going to, was not going to be a source of pain.
It also would help to frame the shoulder so that he was easier to keep straight, so you could communicate better and keep finer, more subtle aids with the snaffle. So it serves a great deal of good.
With some horses, this technique is brilliant. Not every horse needs it, of course, but
No.
with some, especially I find the horses that have a little bit of an unstable base of the neck and a tight paw, for them it works really well. Or these old style Baroque stallions that have short stubby necks that are really huge, you can get more suppleness in the paw with those. That's probably why they used it in the Spanish riding school, to create suppleness in a really massive, bulky, stallion with a thick neck. But these thoroughbred types, when he has a good neck basically, but the good neck I always find is a bit of a double-edged sword, because it's bendable, it's flexible, so it can flex in all sorts of places where you don't want it to, right?
What they do.
And then they can protect their paw, which is like the place you're interested in, but that's usually the least flexible part, right? And the base of the neck is usually a lot more flexible. And you have to find a way to stabilize that base so that you can even feel the top of the paw and you can even talk to the paw, right? And so that's where I find the setup with, you have three sets of, leather, so to speak, on each side of the neck, right? This draw rein has the lower one, the higher one, and then you have the snaffle rein. That gives you so much stability and gives you you can prevent him from getting kinked in the middle of the neck. You can stabilize the base of the neck, and then you can isolate the paw. So it's in certain cases it's super effective, right?
Yeah. Well, and the lower rein, the one that connects to the girth, it's basically floppy. It's not adding any pressure. So do you want to see what he looked like before and what he looked like?
Do that. Let's
totally.
do that.
It's interesting to see him, in that old picture there. It's like, oh, he doesn't have much muscling yet, because the way I remember him, like just before we stopped, working him on Skype, he was a lot beefier. He was a lot bigger.
Right.
And
I took him out somewhere, and somebody asked me if he was an Andalusian or a part Andalusian. and somebody, and I also had I would be riding him in public, because for a part of our lesson arc, I was using a public space, and someone came in one day and asked me if where I got the new horse.
Amazing.
Biggest compliment.
That is a compliment. Really. That's really cool.
Wow,
Yeah,
on the left is amazing.
he's so, yeah, unmuscled.
It
Yeah.
looks like a 4-year-old or like a 3-year-old, basically, right? Yeah, no
That's,
muscling, still on the
yeah,
forehead.
that's 2006.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow, easy.
I don't look too great either. One of the things when I was going through the all of these pictures to try, I was like, to me the thing I got fascinated with was me. Like,
Yeah.
the big thing that's changing is me. Because I start out, I'm kind of like curled up and my knees are up and everything, like, and I still ride with the reins too long a lot of the time, but it's like the training didn't just affect the horses.
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah, your seat has gotten a lot better. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, yeah, what happened then?
So so one of the outcomes of being down at your place and training with you was I was kind of casually looking for another horse and I decided, based on the combined schoolmaster and incredibly difficult off-track thoroughbred thing, that I wanted to try if it was going to be feasible to develop a horse myself. And my sort of thinking on that was that I didn't want to take on other people's failed projects again.
Yes.
That if something was going to go wrong and I did it, then I would take responsibility for that. But I didn't want to take responsibility for other people's bad ideas.
Yeah.
So I talked to Thomas about, like, do you think that this would be, and this conversation took place over a couple of months, but I said, like, do you think that would be reasonable? Like, could I do that? And would you help me? And so he said yes and yes. And I looked at a lot of horses. I was in Europe for a little bit, kind of. I was sort of casually thinking, like, I'll look around and see what I see, and maybe it'll be a warm blood. And anyway, I'd never been exposed to Lipizzans except in pictures, and going to the shows that tour around when I was a little kid. So, but Thomas and Shana, at the point that I was there, had a Lipizzan breeding program. And so they had young horses, and there were two. I wanted a boy, and there was only two little boys kind of available. So it was great. It was, I got to kind of try before you buy. I got to they said, spend time with them, take them out, do whatever, so I got to kind of know and pick one that, that I thought would be a good match for me. And that was fantastic. So I bought he was just almost 2 when I bought him, and he came home and he sat around for a couple of years, and Thomas and I trained Griffin. And then we started my second horse, who's the one that I'm working on now. So I did everything. I'm proud of this. Like, there are a lot of things, like, I wish I'd known better. It wasn't like people weren't telling me as it was happening.
Yeah.
Like, every single day when I'm riding my horse now, I'm like, I have like Thomas or other people in my, like, I did the clinics, I had like judging feedback. I've got lots of feedback over the years. People were saying he needs to be straighter, or he needs to do this, or he needs to do that. And now I'm at the point where I have a better sense of that. And I'm like, oh no, I still don't.
But you don't know until you know.
That's just it.
This is how you get there.
You have to try, and it's iterative, right? So if I hadn't tried, I wouldn't be in a position now to be annoyed with my younger self for not getting it, right?
Exactly.
But so I'm proud of the fact, though, that to this day, no one but me has ever ridden this horse.
Wow,
that's amazing.
You started him yourself. You did all of the starting, all of the work, all of the training.
Yeah.
I've had like, amazing input and support over the years, but at the end of the day, like, all the good was created by me, and all the things that I am now attempting to fix are also me.
But where are you now?
So right now we are getting ready to, I hope, next spring, try a Grand Prix.
Yeah.
We have everything except the we have everything except the one tempies. They are sort of, it's sort of like one tempi, two one tempi, like
That's
so
really normal at this stage.
Yeah, it's
really
but
normal.
I kind of have decided I want to go ahead and try it anyway. Because, well, I mean, I think you have to, like, if you live in Florida or Germany or somewhere where it's 10 minutes to a horse show, then maybe it's different. But like for me, horse showing has pushed me along, and it's meant sometimes I have to just get out there when I know it's not perfect, because that's been getting that feedback and kind of trying to explore a lot of things has helped me move along. So I'm going to stick my neck out and try it. And it was, originally I thought I was going to try to do it last year, and then it just didn't feel like the time. And I got kind of something that I like, so it's been nice with this horse because he doesn't have the baggage, and he's quite, I mean, he's super intelligent. He's got a, he's about 1 million times more physically gifted than me. So, he's allowed me to have a lot of fun and do a lot of things. So I showed him, he's not like some horses like just love showing. I don't think he loves showing. But he likes socializing. He likes to be at the horse show, and it's like, it's me. Look, I'm so he enjoys funny. That part.
Like his dad.
But yeah, so I've been, I just kind of have been showing him. He's given me the opportunity to ride clinics with big clinicians. I think that I am a better clinic rider because I have the scaffolding, like I've been taught systematically. So so I can use that time pretty well. Having as many people kind of give you feedback as possible is great, is one of the things that I've learned. The other thing that I've learned is getting feedback from people with great eyes is fantastic. The solutions they suggest are not necessarily the ones for you, or sometimes it takes some translation. So there's a give and take between that, but I've got to ride him with Stephen Clark and Ann Gribbons and Lilo Four, and I mean, so like that's been great for learning. We've had some nice successes, and I have some pictures of him if you want to see.
Yeah, sure.
Let's do it.
Yeah, sure. And do you still have some pictures from Griffin when he was older?
I don't. He didn't get photographed as much because he wasn't going to horse shows.
That's what happens.
Because he looked very different from the two pictures. He was a lot beefier. Oh my God! Look at Scorpio.
Scorpio so that's young one.
Yeah. That's him as a 4-year-old and him as a 14-year-old.
Wow. Yeah.
So those are the
beefy boy, yeah.
Yeah, he went through a fat boy phase, that's for sure.
I remember.
Runs in the family.
Yeah, Limpasons could be like that. Look at him.
Yeah, nice.
So beautiful. Oh, look at him.
That's my beautiful horse. So
yes, he is.
Yeah, so it was, so, and last year, instead of trying to go up to Grand Prix, we did a bucket list thing for me that I always wanted to do, which is I always thought it would be fun to try riding a CDI.
Yeah.
And it was going to be like, I wasn't in a position to take him to California or Florida, but last year, because of the Pan Am Games, they were holding CDIs in Western Canada so that athletes out here could qualify. And anyway, so we got to do 2 CDIs, and we had, so, and he did great. He won in the amateur division. He won 4 of 5 starts. But I will tell you that, like, if you're like, it's not just all a glory story. It's so the one we didn't win was we completely face planted. So, and this is the, this is horses, and this is like the other thing you got to learn is like your head. You got like how to manage your own headspace, because so he'd been doing it. He'd been in the arena. Everything was good. And we rode in for our first test in the second one, and he looked sideways and he said, like, oh, a CDI is an international level competition.
Qualifiers for the Olympics.
So, and they have 3 or 5 judges. So there's judges all around you. Anyway, the day of the big CDI 3, which is a 5-judge panel, we rode down center line. He looked at the judge's booth on the side and went sideways off. Like, so we had like the biggest doofy, like it was just a mess. So then I get him halted kind of around X, and I drop my curb rein, and it's like slopping around his knees while I ride off down to start the test. So, so I get to the first, and like these things are very tight, right? You have to, everything has to happen in the right, if something goes wrong, it just sort of spirals. So anyway, so I'm like a goob, like trying to pick up my reins and like, we get around, and anyway, we get through the test, and we kind of like, by the time I get to the canter part of the test, I now have my reins sort of back, but anyway, it was really bad. And that's one of those things, right, where it's, like happens. I like to bet, like it's nice when when you have successes, but it's also nice to keep it real. I will say that he was not as happy at that show. And one of the things that I've always struggled with is controlling my head. And this is in training and in showing, like, not panicking, not having not just like, oh God, I got to do something. So, so he came out the second day, and I was like, okay, we have nothing to lose because we have shown the judges that, I'm an idiot. So I rode him, and he still wasn't very happy. And I thought, oh no, this is going to be bad. So we did a whole kind of thing where, like, so my husband, who is awesome and has like horse whispering capabilities, he went and took my horse out, and he just kind of like, they just mind melded and got happy together. And I did brain control on me. So what I did was I used one of the Feldenkrais exercises called the hippie shake, because I was like, okay, I got to shake this off. I got to, like, mentally and physically, I got to shake this off, and I just got to go ride the horse I got and have the test I'm going to have, and and let it go. So I played Taylor Swift. So you shake it off, and I did the Feldenkrais, and the dog was watching me. She was like, "What are you doing?" Like, but I'll say, like, it worked. Like that, the biggest win I had last summer was that, like, it worked. We went out and we had a good test.
Wow. That's crazy.
So it's like, so sometimes it's, it's like, sometimes your wins are not, like, it's nice to get the ribbons, but sometimes the wins are, the other stuff.
Right.
Yeah, it is. That's the big stuff, actually.
Amazing one.
Yeah.
Amazing journey. It goes to show you it's not a linear, journey, right? It's not you start here and then you end up here. It's all straight.
It's much linear even here than it really was, because we were with you throughout all of this, and we've seen it all, and so we know all the ups and downs and the troubles that happened along the way. But in the end, the progression is constant.
Well, and I will say that, like what I'm dealing with right now in terms of trying to prepare him for the Grand Prix test is it's all basics. It's all it's not like, it is not.
That is it.
Like, there's no way that 1 tempies are going to happen until I get him straight and quick to the aids, and connected and fix the bracing. Like he's he's a Lipizzan. He's a big, heavy Lipizzan. He has a tendency to want to do everything with here, you know. So it's like going like everything I do is going back, and you know, it's trying to kind of refine that, the stuff that's always been there, that's we've always been working on. Right. It's also, the other thing I'm noticing is that the only thing that changes is the margins of error get smaller and smaller. So at training level, you have quite big margins for, you know, like getting him looking good. If you take like when I was looking at the pictures, you know, if you look at pictures in series, still photos in series, like you can see there'll always be the nice moment, but then there's the, you know, like the, you know, the bracy moments, you know, the awkward bad position moments. You got like, the higher up you go, the more you got to eliminate as much as possible all of those things. Like you need the good picture as much of the time, and because you just don't have the space to do it. So, you know, it becomes a game of millimeters, and it's like riding a bazoo ball, right? It's like, because any little thing goes off and then you're not in the balance you need to be. Any little thing goes off and you have a bracing somewhere, and, you know, and you're gone. So
the margins,
so it's like, so it's the same stuff, it's just executing at a more and more refined level.
That's why it's always, you know, helpful, like especially when you feel like you hit the ceiling or you're stuck in a rut, go back to the basics, refine them, make them more precise, look where you're losing time or losing space, how many steps does it take me to get from here to there, and you know, and then I'm too late when I get there, I'm not in the right balance yet, blah blah, you know. And so if you fix those basics, then you afterwards you go back to the fancy stuff. It's easier, it's better.
It blasts through.
For me, that's always been the case. Like, there's no point in fiddling around with the advanced movements. Got to go back to the basics. Where's the hole? You know, where am I imprecise? Where am I losing, you know, inches or seconds?
And when I was getting ready for the big, one of the big shows in the summer, so getting ready to go do the, you know, the big judge panels, I demo ride for Ritter courses. So I had done a demo ride, filmed it, of something incredibly basic. Like, it wasn't about collection. I think it was like picking up the reins and stretching and picking up. It was one of those.
I remember
those
this,
things. Anyway, it was, so I did that. And anyway, so Thomas did the voiceover, and he pointed to, like, what he put his finger on was something that this horse, it's been all the whole way. We have like a naughty like a left hind that wants to, you know, have a mind of its own, or, you know, that doesn't really want to come to the party. And, you know, and that like that. So I took that piece of information and sort of funneled it into how I prepped him for the show. And it was, you know, like, it's that, those small, tiny little things that make a huge difference. Like, so going out and, you know, trying to ride more collection or ride more uppity stuff, that doesn't do the fix. It's like, you got to get, you know, like, it's the stuff in relaxation, it's the stuff in the warm up that's kind of that's where it all lives.
Like I always talk about polishing the stone, it's going back and just polishing those little tiny little rough edges and making it a little bit shinier, and doing the basic work, the chopping wood and carrying water, you know, doing that basic work. And that's what makes everything else move ahead. Yeah.
We've often had breakthroughs, like in lessons still with both horses, right? The Skype lessons.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know, you do something and I see a little detail, and then we would drill down on this a little bit and practice like the halt and move off from the halt, like really super simple basic stuff. And it's like, it's not quite right yet. There's still, still needs to be a little better, right? And then you often had a breakthrough after that, right? That was always like, wow, light bulb.
Well, and you want to know something funny about that?
What?
So, you know, like, what, like over a decade of telling me, like, you got to get him like, so my horse is like, he's a little bit like what you called him once. You said he's like an aristocrat. He's like, he never hurries, he never carries cash. You know, it's like he's kind of like, I'm just awesome the way that I am, so I'll do it when I do it. And that was totally fine up to a certain point, and then it becomes a problem. And so early on, I was just like so delighted that he was being cooperative, and the things are like, oh, you're so wonderful. And I'm like, you know, and he's like, great, like I want everything to be like that. And now it's like, no, nobody, like we gotta go now. And he's like,
what? Have to work?
I don't think so. And I'm like, I'm bringing along another young one now, and I'm like, okay, he does not get to brace from the beginning, and he's got to do stuff when I ask. Like we are not going to try to deprogram that 10 years from now. We are going to
exactly. Yeah.
That's like, and it's like, I'm haunted by the, like, you're basically in my head every day.
Sorry. Sorry.
Aww.
He's not, no, but like, he's not like straight, kind of straight is not straight enough. Kind of, you know, kind of when you ask is not quick enough. It's like,
yeah, it's good to what, third level, and then it's not good enough anymore.
Exactly.
Right? Basically.
And Grand Prix like just does not happen unless you gotta have balance and softness and cooperation.
Yeah, no delay. Yeah. The horse can't go, oh, I'll consider it, you know.
And I mean, and the kind of horse that he is, like, he's not like, he doesn't do the big spectacular things. So it's like the only way that we can look good and do decently is to be super accurate. Yes. And pleasant, right? Like he's got to be as soft as I can make him, which is not easy on a big muscular horse. He's, you know, he's got to be like, it's got to look pleasant and smooth and accurate. That's our superpower.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a handicap that you're riding Lipizan, right? I mean, even Podhajski was saying that he had to ride twice as well as everybody else just to, you know,
they're great
get a
horses,
good score. Yeah,
but
you know, in competition,
not easy.
Yeah, it's harder to get good scores on a Lipizan than on a one blood, right?
Yeah.
Well, and it's also, it's fun. Like, so we're never going to the Olympics. That's not a thing. But, you know, but the one thing that kind of happens a lot is we roll in, and of course, like, you know, it's like everybody's 17 hands and brown or black, and then there's me like 3 feet shorter than everybody else on my little fat white horse. And
it's just
you know, and I think, and people think like, so people kind of think like, oh, isn't that cute? It's you. And anyway, I was, one of the things I was doing when I was warming up in the CDI for the CDI was I was doing some PF. I wanted to kind of get forward and sit really kind of as sharp as I could make it for the test. So I was doing PF go, so to kind of amplify that. And anyway, afterwards, one of the other competitors, their sort of trainer came over to my stall, and she's like, who is he? Is he doing Grand Prix? Like, what's going on? Like, and it's like, because she'd been watching him PF, and you know, and like, you know, so like, so people kind of go, oh, isn't that cute, you and your horse? And then, you know, but like, he does have like, oh. Yeah, he does have aces, you know, and you know, and it's fun when you get discounted and then kind of come out of nowhere.
Surprise them. But yeah, with the you know, the precision and the sharpness and so on, it's tricky with him because he has this big personality where he thinks he's just wonderful and it's good enough, and it's like, stop harassing me, right? And you know, other horses, you know, you can vibrate with the whip, you can give a little poke with a spur, and then we shape up, and he doesn't necessarily do that. It's like, you know, like especially with the whip, you know, I remember that was always tricky. You had to be super careful with the whip because he would actually slow down more, right?
Well, and I've had to, you know, like one of the things I've had to learn with him is like with Griffin, the stepping, like stirrup stepping, was like a superpower. It allowed me to communicate with him again outside of ways he'd been damaged. He really liked that. It made a lot of sense to him. It makes sense to most horses. So I came out of that experience and was like, oh, this is great. I'm going to use it for everything. And what I learned to, you know, over time is that like, you have many tools in your toolbox. Like, you don't want to fix everything with a hammer. So my Lipizan went like, he's like, sure. You know, like, and so I had to step away from that as a technique because he was using it. He was starting to use it against me. He was using it as a way to slow down. He was using it as a way to, like it's one, like all things, it has two sides. So I think it was like 5 or 6 when we were playing with like steps. We were just doing stirrup stepping. We weren't trying to do anything like this in a lesson, but he started offering passage because he likes passage. It's slow. It's his thing. It's his like showy offy thing. So, so the roots of that came really early, but he, then he wanted everything that was going to be the answer to everything, right? Like, I don't feel like doing
everything
it.
was passage, I know.
Or I'll slow down.
That's hard. How can I give you a little passage?
We had to, we had to.
That'll make you happy, right?
He had to develop the, the things that he didn't want to develop, and that's, and I had to get, you learn something new and then you're like, look, I am the master of the universe, right? Like, when I learned how, like not off the clinic, but when we actually did flying changes with Griffin and he learned how to do it, and it was like, and he got pretty good at it. I was like, I am awesome. I can train flying changes to anybody. And then the second horse was like, that was a nightmare, right?
He was a little more difficult in the flying changes.
Well, it was, he required completely different things. And because I walked into it thinking, I can do this. And, it's like, I created some problems that we then had to back out of.
That's what happens.
Well, he's such a different horse, different body type, different personality. Everything is completely different. So it's a huge adjustment.
Yeah.
So, and I think somebody asked how long it took me to get from
Nina
beginner to FEI. So I started riding again seriously in 2005. I sort of muggled along and didn't really go anywhere. I did not make any significant ground between 2005 and 2009 when everything crashed and burned. So in 2009, I sort of started my systematic journey, and in 2017, we did the training with Griffin. I started my Lipizzan in, I think it was 2012 when he was 4. So between 2012 that's when he was backed, and I didn't take him anywhere. I didn't start showing him till he was 6. So we did just 2 years of at home. And in 2017, we wrote our first pre-St. George test. So I wanted to do that because that was the year I turned 50. And I had this, like, I want to celebrate 50 by riding an FEI test. So that's what we did. And then you think like, oh yeah, I'm there. And then you realize it's like going back to training level, like moving, then you have like a whole ton of new things you have to learn within that.
There's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's fast from 2012 to 2015, 0 to pre-St. George. That's really fast.
Yeah, he went up a level a year, pretty much.
Yeah.
Wow.
Marjorie,
See, now you're on schedule, on Klimke's schedule.
there you go. Marjorie's asking, what breed is the horse you're now starting?
So he's another Lipizzan.
Cool.
And they're totally different. Like they are, they're like, you think, like, again, like you gotta approach every horse as if it's a brand new thing. He's talented. He's smaller. He's got a fun sense of humor, and he's one that they're all different. But like if you form an intention with him and you can kind of get really clear in yourself, he will do it. He's one of those horses.
Nice. What line is he?
He is a Neapolitano.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Nice.
Cool.
Good. You see, I haven't never seen him actually.
Right now he's a drunken sailor. So I bought him when he was a yearling, and he's just been kind of hanging out. He's 5. He was very immature. Even I was already gonna like I thought, like, okay, the first start I kind of sat on him and got led around a little bit in the fall of his 3-year-old year, and then started him when he was 4. This horse just was not ready at 4. He still looked like a baby. And so I just stayed off of him till he was 5. So we're in the ugly drunken sailor
Yeah,
phase of the project right now.
that's interesting. Yeah, cool.
But I found that with him doing a lot on the ground, like, so I do everything I want to do under saddle with him on the ground first. I let him get really comfortable and happy and balanced in it, and then when I get on, there's a lot less problems.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can familiarize them on the ground, that makes things a lot easier. If they can learn things without weight on their back first, that really helps. So are you doing work in hand with him, or what kind of groundwork are you doing?
Finally, like, I am terrible at work in hand. I am like very, very jealous of people like Ricky who've dug in and got good at it. But yeah, for him it made a lot of sense, and he's small, so it's easier. He's gonna be pony, like the lip of my more advanced Lipizan is big, really big for a Lipizan. He's 15.2. This horse is like 14.2, so I can put my hands over him and kind of steer him, and
it makes it easier.
work with him that way.
That's so cool. Very interesting. Yeah, I remember with Griffin, we tried work in hand, but I don't think he liked it, if I remember. He was always kicking at the whip and stuff, and I think I eventually decided it's not the way to go.
It was really funny too, because like Griffin had a really strong sense of justice. So if he felt like he was being treated unfairly, that's when you would get or if you were doing things to him and he, like, doing to him, not with him, that was a problem. But I remember you were working him in hand in Oregon, and he was like, he hated the whip. Like, he was kicking out, and you were like, just, he wasn't being pressured in any kind of awful way, but he was just like carrying on. And so you were doing it, and eventually you just swore at him. Like, I've never, like, in German. And he kind of went
in German,
and he kind of went, all right. Like, it was a justice moment where he's like, okay, you got a point. And then he kind of was like, yeah.
Sometimes it helped. I must have felt like he was just, I don't know, not trying or messing around or something. I don't know. I can't remember. It's so long ago now, but I do that only if I feel like, you need to at least give it a try. Don't just say no out of principle and to be contrarian.
And the horse, like, this horse was like very exacting with people, so he went, yeah, fair enough. And my first Lipizan, I haven't done any significant work in hand with him, because he is so he has such a high body awareness kind of IQ that he just has me over a barrel on the ground. Like, I can't. I've tried double lunging him. I've experimented with different things, and he's just like, ha ha ha. I'm going to run the show. You have no say whatsoever. So we decided, and he's hilarious, because he thinks that lunging is beneath him. Like, that's like the biggest insult you could possibly do, is you put the lunge line on him for, like, sometimes you want to take a look, and he's like, what is this? Why are you doing this to me?
That's so funny. Yeah, his dad was like that. His dad was a real snob.
He was.
He had high standards, and if you didn't meet them, he let you know. And he's very he knew who he was.
He always reminds me a little bit of Charles de Cunfee, actually, not in the way he looks, obviously, but in personality. De Cunfee was this, or is, he still this aristocrat, and he'd be remember he would make these funny little stories about like traveling and stuff, and he would talk about how people always say they're excited.
Oh yeah, that's so distasteful.
It was so distasteful to be excited over anything, and he would have these whole things about the people in the airports carrying around their bottles, because they can't have a moment without drinking something, even like the cups, with the straws and
gigantic soft drink cup.
So funny the way he would deliver it, though. He's just with this aristocratic air. He comes from a bygone era, and he just brings that. He's just in our century. He just is. And Tony, the Scorpio's dad, was the same way, you know, just like, you know, I can't believe people dare to do this. And, you know, it was so funny. And of course, you know, it makes sense if his son has some of those traits.
No, he likes to be like, he loves kind of at horse shows, you know, when people stand around in groups and talk, he loves to be kind of in the middle of that. Like,
Right.
but he's not like, but he has to be happy. Like that's what I've learned. You cannot come at him with well, you can't come at him with a bad mind. And especially in like sometimes in the training, you got to have the discussions, you got to have the, you know, like, no, you got to do it. But at a horse show, he's like, you got to make him, the key to everything is he's got to feel like everything's being handed him on a silver salver, right? Like he's got to feel like the king of everything. And he goes, here I am. And
so cute.
It was funny because I was not expecting this at the CDI level, but he actually ended up with this kind of fan base, like, so like people were really into the, like, because he looks so different, they, you know, and the, you know, flashy warm bloods are what they are, right? They're, you know, but anyway, so then we looked so different from everybody else. Like the stewards were all into it, like want to talk about him and watch him, and people coming over and like,
nice.
And, you know, and like cheering for him. And then somebody came up to me afterwards, I didn't even know, and said, if I could have any horse here, I'd pick yours.
Oh,
that's nice.
What
so
a compliment.
That's a huge compliment.
Yeah, well, and it's, I mean, I think that's the relationship part. I think, and I think it was cool for me, because in competition context, you tend to think of like, okay, like, you know, who's got the best and the, you know, like, and that made me go, wait a minute, like that's not what not everybody's into that, right? Some people just want to be able to do things with their horse and, you know, live their little amateur dreams and, you know, and have a nice relationship and have fun.
Yeah, exactly. So you need to make a Facebook page for him.
Instagram.
Why not? Yeah, that's awesome. And I was actually earlier when we were talking about the Skype lessons, I just remembered, you know, the internet was so bad that it was often just still photos. Basically, every second there was another picture.
Yeah,
and
nowadays the internet
extrapolate and kind of guess what was going on. I'm like, oh my God. I mean, now it's so much better, right? Now you can actually see a movie.
Nowadays it's so much better, but it was like, okay, you'd see the horse here and then you'd see the horse there and then there. And you had to kind of use your thinking to bridge it, you know, and figure out what was happening.
I always thought that Thomas's training as an Egyptologist who focused on like because you're used to like reading hieroglyphics and difficult things. I always figured that made you able to do that.
I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah, it was a lot of extrapolating from, you know, faulty data, so to speak, or gappy data, you know. It's like, oh my God, what happened between this picture and this picture?
Or it's like so pixelated, you're just looking at a...
Sometimes it was like a impressionist painting. That's very true. Something, yeah. God, those were the days. But we made it work.
That was the Wild West of online instruction.
It's so much better.
Yeah, and then if you had a storm, then it would just, you know, the line would collapse. So if everybody was at home playing video games or something, right, then the connection was really slow. Sometimes we had to give up.
Over Christmas, when people were using Skype a lot, they would the Skype would fail.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow, it's crazy. Seems like the dark ages. The modem days.
The modem days. It wasn't quite that bad.
But that's how it feels. Like that long ago.
Nina asks if we can sometimes share our journey. We can't today. It would end up being way too long. But yeah, that's a great topic. We should someday share our journeys, the ups and downs, and the everything that we've gone through. That would take a whole book. That's a whole book.
It's really boring, though.
It's really boring. Not to them.
Just summarize it real quick.
Sometime we'll do it. we'll do it. Any other questions? Somebody, Allison asked if you have a picture of your new horse, but I know you weren't prepared to show that, so I don't think you have that ready. Lots of people are saying bye. Terry says, oh boy, yet another new book. Yeah. And Linda asks if you have a book, Kristen.
Yeah.
So
It's not a horse book. She has several books,
Yeah,
right?
actually does, but yeah.
So yeah, one of the outcomes of all this. So when I'm not riding my horse as an amateur, I'm a professor of English, and my research actually took a turn into doing kind of equine studies as a result of my experience with my horses. So right around the time that I was starting my journey with Griffin and Thomas and Shana, I started to think about, the horses that I had, and I was teaching Black Beauty, and I sort of, anyway, it kind of led me into that, and then it's sort of developed from there. So I have a couple of books, but they're academic books.
Something, maybe a horse book.
Yeah, so you edited Black Beauty, right? And
Yeah, I edited Black Beauty.
right?
And then I've done sort of 2 edited collections. And there's actually, so this is slimy. It wasn't, somebody else wrote the thing, but they were discussing Lipizzans, and we needed headshots of Lipizzans. So the 2 headshots are my horse and Shama, who is Thomas and Shana's stallion, because they wanted to show kind of the Roman versus convex, kind of more Araby profiles. So yeah, so I've found a way to wedge my horses into my work life. I wasn't able to afford my horses until I got a real job.
Common. Marjorie wants to know which university you teach.
I teach at the University of Northern British Columbia, which, if you look at a map of British Columbia, people think, oh, you're by Vancouver, and I'm not. We are kind of marginally a university of the Arctic.
Closer to the North Pole than Vancouver.
So we're about 10 hours north of Vancouver. It's very small, and I've been lucky that I've been able to do what I can do here. Like, I've been lucky that I've been able to find support outside of the area. I've been lucky that as a result of getting trained and being quite systematic and all that, is that I've been able to make some good decisions. So, like, over the last couple of years, a young professional from the area kind of moved back, and I've been able to get her really excellent eye and sort of on the ground help when I need it. So that, but I think that being able to make good decisions about that comes from, so I think the worst thing you could do is put yourself in a position where you're getting trained by somebody who doesn't share your vision and values, because it can get, I don't know if anybody's had those lessons or clinics where the person is yelling at you to do something that doesn't feel right, and you're kind of trapped in it, and it's like, do I walk out, or do I just try to get the horse as close to there as I can so we can get out of this and stop? But it's a really terrible feeling. So I've learned that, I try to take feedback from everybody, but I'm really picky about who I let tinker with my horse. And I'm really super picky about what things I decide to try, and what things sometimes I decide the observation is really valid, that the person has captured something that's appropriate, but what they're suggesting is not how I want to go about it. So, so it's like, a big part of this learning is it allows you to do a better job finding people that you really trust to work with.
Right. Yeah, that was interesting too, when you started taking lessons from the judges, and they would say, he needs to go more forward, Scorpio or something, right? And then you said, well, if I do that for 2 days, he's flat and he's heavy and leaning, and so I can't. Yes, I get it. He needs to go more forward. But I can't achieve it by just
Right.
full speed ahead, you know?
Their how was not necessarily the how that you needed to implement with him,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had a really interesting kind of insight about that recently.
Yeah.
So I was a really close friend of mine just had a milestone birthday, and she wanted to go to the Olympia Horse Show in London. So I went with her. And so I was there and I was watching things, and they had like, so I got to see the Charlotte's showing. I got to you got to have that thing where like every time you turn around, there's Carl Hester walking by in a tux, that whole deal. So I watched, there was super high quality jumping, like some of the best jumping I've ever seen, but so like top warm bloods. But what was going on at the same time were the cob classes. Which is they're not doing dressage. But so I was sitting there watching the cob classes, and I was like, all of a sudden, that's my horse. That's why people who are warm blood tuned can't see my horse properly. Like, so some of the stuff that he does, he gets like a cob, I think because of I never thought about the biomechanics or the physiology, but if they're not perfectly connected and perfectly you haven't got everything just right, they use their bulk to brace. They get cut in half, and then what happens is you get this little bit of like this, and they were always like connection, and
right.
But how they wanted me to fix it never made sense.
Right.
And
they wanted you to write them more forward, more through.
Yeah, but he's not like the cobs are like little, little round piggies, and then the warm bloods, like watching him, especially in the warm-up rings where they're not, they're giraffes. Like a modern warm blood is a whole, like a neck that's 4 feet long, and and all legs, and stabilizing and getting that kind of a horse forward is a completely different kind of,
it is
like exercise in physics.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And getting one with short legs and a lot of body mass and a real, and
same principles, very different application.
yeah. So like I say, the observations are good. The feedback of you need to address this, and and sometimes you got to be really. So it's easy to go, oh, you're just not seeing me, or oh, you're just being too picky, or oh, you're just, being, you're just sort of dismissing me because I don't have the same kind of horse as everybody else.
Yeah.
But within that, there's always a core of truth.
Yeah.
Like so like people they're seeing something. If I chew on it and think about it and sort of work the pieces long enough, usually there's something in there for me. I just got to find it. And like I say, then sometimes the answers that are being proposed, the ones that would work for me. And like the same thing, I've had to say, like I get a lot of, the competition feedback, but even the very classical people, like they have a lot of really good insights, but some of the implementation isn't like, I might use it in the moment. I might use it as, but as an entire system, it just not for my horse.
Right.
Interesting, huh?
So it's, it's about kind of finding like, where are the,
what has helped you to learn what is right for your horse, and how to learn the framework and the tools that you need to apply with your horse?
Well, you have to be educated. You have to have a toolbox, and you have to have a system to start with. So, whatever that is, like my system happens to be yours. And
our system.
And that is because it made sense, so sometimes, like I don't like orthodoxies particularly, so there's like, you must, like the competition people, like it must go like this, or the classical people, like this, and we do this. Whenever somebody says we do this, I always like go, oh, and kind of run the other way, because it's fluid, so all of them have good things. Like one of the, like part of my getting, like trying to to make the final steps into Grand Prix has meant going back and taking seriously a lot of the things that are competition basics, that just applying them, like back when I was in training level or first level, like it wasn't working. It was like there was too many other things that had to be filled in before that was possible. But I've had to go back and do like some things that they would be like, duh, that's the first thing you do, not the last thing you do. But that's had to come back into the equation just in a way that's educated. So that's like, so once you get a system and you've apprenticed in it enough that you start to develop, even if it's like, I mean, my feel is entirely constructed and my eye is entirely constructed because I don't have any native talent in either of those things. So, but it's weird, like as you're going along and doing things and learning stuff, like one day I remember, or like, well, my metaphor for Thomas, I was always like, you're Rembrandt, like in the Renaissance painting studios, you have the guy who's like doing, God's hand touching at him. And then you have like all of his minions that are off painting the clouds and the cherubs. And, like you start as a cloud painter and then you graduate to being a cherub painter. And then eventually, you apprentice your way into being able to do major figures. And then you can kind of paint on your own. So, going through the stages of that, I remember within about a year or two of starting to work with you, I walked into a public riding ring setting locally. And I'd been sort of off on my own. So and I was watching someone ride, they were teaching lessons and I was watching someone ride around and I went, that horse is completely locked up across the top line. And I was like, well, where did that come from? I was like, where did that idea come from? Like, so I started to develop an eye. It's a work in progress, but like being able to watch the cobs go around and pick apart what's happening here. Like, why are they doing this? When is that happening? What's happening? Like the riders for whom that isn't happening, what's different? Like, is it the conformation of the horse? Is it how they're riding the horse? Is it like what things are, so that's a work in progress. But when you can do that, that makes it, that means you're at the beginning of starting to be able to find things and add them in. The other, the filtering, that's trial and error. So a lot of times what will happen is, I'll go to a clinic and get taught something different and you try it. And, and if in 2 days you have a pancaked horse, you got to obviously abandon and kind of step back and say, okay, like how much of this, where and when? So that's, you keep kind of testing what you know against what you don't know and working with it till you get things that sort of work for you. And then you find ways to add, to find other people who can help you identify your holes, and you entertain carefully various answers to how you might get through that. And some things I know right away, like as a system, no. Some things, like that you add in once you have a platform, once you have a basis of understanding and you've educated yourself to a certain point where you understand the theory, you understand the mechanics, you have some feel, you have some eye, then you can start to add in other things and understand how it's working. Like, so you can if I can understand, okay, I understand why that's helping me, then that to me is a good, like, okay, I can keep going with this. And I've, honestly, I've gone through all kinds of, I've gone down all kinds of paths, right? Like it's part of learning. When I started, this was even like before I met you guys, I used to say to people, like when I first got Griffin, it's like, if I win the lottery, I want to have a German guy who will tell me what to do all the time.
Oh
Like I want to be one of those, like I kind of like I want to be one of those riders where the trainer does everything, right? Like where it's like I ride and it's glorious and that like I'm constantly being micromanaged. And it turns out that sometimes, you know, you don't get the German guy you want, but you get the German guy you need.
Be careful what you wish for.
Because because you were really frank from the outside. Like you said, I am not going to, I didn't ask you to do that. You said, I'm not doing that. Like you are going, you know, if we're going to do this, you're going to learn how to do it.
And how to think for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, and that's been great, right? Like I think one of the things that I have going for me when I show, you know, compared to other amateurs who have like the ones that win a lot have trainers that ride their horse all the time, that warm them up, that like, you know, they basically rip the thing out of their ear and ride into the ring. I've never had that. So, you know, I have to warm my own horse up. When I started showing, you know, and I would have like a face plant, I couldn't go crying to Thomas because it was on the weekend and he was like teaching clinics. He was busy. It was, you know, like he was on the road all the time. So it was, I couldn't go and whine. Now I have whined over the years. I honestly have. And Thomas has been my psychologist in moments of despair. But, you know, but like I've had to kind of take responsibility for, you know, so it means I try something and it doesn't work and I have to like pick myself up and
you learn from that. You learn from that.
Yeah.
And
the last, like I would say the last year or so, I kind of like, so we haven't been doing steady lessons for a while because what I realized was that I already like we would be in a lesson and I would know what you were going to tell me.
Yeah.
He
would know it too. It's like, you know, you already know this. You already know what I'm going to tell you. Yeah.
So what I realized was that I had to find a way. I had to crawl inside it, and like I know what you're going to say. I know what you're going to tell me to do. But what I got to do is learn how to inhabit that by myself and learn how to implement it with a like not just kind of. But really, like I gotta crawl in and find it myself. And, you know, and that is a messy project, right? That's, you know, sometimes I do things that are good and sometimes I do things that are not good. And, you know, and there's moments where it's gotta look like crap. Like you gotta like, there's moments where in order to get the horse in the right place, like I've had to ride, like I've had to change how I'm riding, right? So it's not all like me in this beautiful, like sometimes I got to sit back more, sometimes I got to sit forward more, sometimes I like I've had to learn how to be what he needs me to be in the to get through that piece. And usually I know like when we can go back to me riding in more, you know, like make it, you know, more correct, like that's when we've got it. So it's you know, it's
it's great. I mean, it's like, you know, you learn to ride a bike and, you know, initially you have training wheels and then eventually you take them off. And it's kind of, you know, where you are, you've taken the training wheels off, you can do it yourself. You know, you don't need regular input. I mean, maybe
nothing makes us prouder than to know that you are off on your own running and you're doing great. And of course, you know, we're all still, you know, working together on some level, but you're not coming to us for regular help every step of the way because you got it. You got it.
And I remember that in the like first year or two, you know, Skype lessons, we would do something in a lesson. I think then you would practice it religiously, but a little bit mechanically, right? And then you would run into a wall. And it's like you missed the exit of the freeway, right, where you needed to change what you were doing.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like at the beginning when all I could do was we would work on something in a lesson and then I was just like, okay, I'm going to do, like, I would just do it, you know, like work it. And it, you know, and it started out like I could get to about 3 days and then it would sort of start to fall apart. And, you know, and so over the years, like the gap got longer, right? So I could get from lesson to lesson without the wheels falling off so much, or the wheels would fall off in less, you know, extraordinarily, you know, spectacular ways. And, you know, and so that's the apprenticeship.
I know. Yeah, it's great. I mean, now you can do all the analysis yourself. I mean, helps that you're a trained scientist because you can bring that scientific training, you know, to the writing. That's just what I did as well. And yeah, it's really great that you basically, you know what's wrong, you know what you need to do. We just have to figure out, okay, how do I do that exactly, right? And one other thing I've been thinking about too, that we should mention is that, you used our methodology as a sort of a jumping off point, platform, whatever, foundation. But now you're developing your own. And I think everybody needs to do that, right? Because you get input from other people who come from different traditions, but they have valuable stuff to offer. Right?
That's why I said it's not our method, our method.
Mhm.
It's our method. You, in true scientific fashion, you're now adding to the body of knowledge.
Yeah, and I think
you
it's
are part
it's
of
fascinating.
it. You're helping to build it.
Yeah, I'm always interested to see. So, what did you learn? What did you figure out? Because I can see it's like you have your own lab now, right? It's not just my lab and you're just, taking my notes or whatever, but it's like you're making your own concoctions and you're coming up with your own solutions. It's like, interesting. So I feel like now, I can start learning from you too, because you probably have insights that I haven't thought about yet.
Exactly. I mean, that's how our relationship worked too. First he taught me and then we worked together and now we help each other.
Now she tells me what to do.
Pretty much.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it's like if you want to work with someone and they're not willing for that to be the case, like some writing instructors, it feels like it's always felt like to me like they don't want you to get better.
No.
They want you to, because I mean,
security.
I know there's a lot of people like me, right? So I'm out at horse shows and and lots of people they've gone out and got fantastic horses and they say, I want to do what you're doing. Like I want to ride Prix St. George. I want to do whatever. And and sometimes I'll be walking along and I'll watch somebody get warmed up and I'm like, you're never going to get there. And it's not because you're not trying. It's not because you don't have the horse. It's because you are locked in a relationship with someone who's, and who doesn't want you to get better.
And who has to keep you under them for their own security. They have to. And it's not in the end, it's not a dynamic for growth.
No, like it's set up for you to not, and then this bothers me too. Like it's the blame the amateur, this is happening because you're a stupid middle-aged woman, right? So as a result, I'm this weird kind of outlier. I'm not a trainer. I'm never going to be a trainer. I don't want to be a trainer, but I like, and being at the CDI where I'm in that barn and I'm like, this is a dream I've had my whole life. I'm having the best time. And, and the people who are trying to get like on the Pan Am team, they're all like, so I'm so glad I'm so glad that's not my path, right? I'm so glad I'm just here, like thinking,
enjoying it.
Like this is so awesome. Me and my horse are having such a good time. Except when we drop the reins and blow up.
Gotta happen sometime.
But I'm also not, not the tethered amateur either, where it's.
Thank God. Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that you said that was your dream at one point, to be a marionette. I can't picture you like that. I think it would be so boring. I think it would be so dissatisfying for you. Because deep down inside, then well, it's not really me. It's not my accomplishment. It's like somebody else pulling the strings, and I'm just, doing stuff I'm being told. I can't imagine that would be fulfilling for you. I think this is a lot more rewarding for you. I think that's you, the researcher, the scientist, and then you do it yourself. And
well, and I mean, I really have to understand why. I have to I can't just. Like I'm fairly good at like being told, like if someone jerry rigs me, like that works fairly well. But if I don't understand what's going on, then the whole show, right? Like I need to know. I need to otherwise, like, when I had the schoolmaster, he did Tempe's by himself. Like you could have put a monkey on his back and he would have done them. And that was, and it's funny, because I said at the time, this is along the lines of the German guy, but like, I was like, the reason we kind of went out and got him was I'd said, like, there was a bucket list movie on at the time, and my husband and I had this discussion about like a bucket list. Like, if you could do anything, what would you do? And he had this list, and I said, if somebody told me I was going to die, tomorrow or whatever, I would run out and buy a horse, buy an FEI trained horse, and ride a line of Tempes.
Mhm.
And I sort of did that,
Yeah.
and it wasn't satisfying at all.
That's what I mean. I know.
But
like,
the
that
funny
didn't
thing
mean
is
I could.
actually,
I didn't understand Tempes. It didn't mean I could really ride them. It didn't like.
no. The funny thing though is pursuing that weird goal actually got you closer to your real goal and finding out what it is that you really wanted, even though you find out that that's not what you want, but it leads you to what you do want. That's the funny thing. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. And also, I mean, it really, it put me on the, like, I mean, like I said, the big learning arc of that horse wasn't that he taught me Tempes, because he didn't. It was that he taught me, like, in a sad way, how much damage you can do to a horse by selfishly and going down a path that's about serving your vanity.
Exploitation. It's just exploitation. Yeah.
And I just knew that, I mean, he just reminded me that that wasn't possible, and having to watch him age out with a horrific injury that basically meant, he couldn't have a nice retirement. He lived to be, we gave him the most pleasant life he could have. But I mean, when we got him, you couldn't, like we put him in a small paddock and he just stood in the corner and cowered, right? I mean, so that told me that I needed to find a different way to do things.
Yes.
That I wasn't willing to do whatever it took to get where I wanted to go.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Sometimes you do things and you learn what you don't want to do, you learn what doesn't work, and it feels maybe like a defeat and like a failure at the time, but it's actually super important. Those lessons are sometimes the most important ones for me, Like, and they kind of point you in the direction that you do want to go in. So yeah, it's interesting. So interesting. So there were a couple more questions.
Questions, lots of great comments.
Oh yeah, here Nina Basta said, "What's your most favorite or most useful thing you learned so far from the Ritters?"
The first thing I said, get someone to slap a lunge line on your boot and try to ride that 20-meter circle. That's where it all, like that, like I go back to that all the time. That is the ground zero.
Yeah.
It gets you to feel, and it's something we learned from Carl Mikolka. He did that with students. I'd never seen that before, and then of course I had to try it right away when after I saw it.
It was a great teaching tool.
Yeah, he did it to us, and then
so we felt what it did, and said, "Oh wow, this is great for teaching students how to really get connected with the horse, with the line that you're riding, all of it together."
Yeah,
as you felt.
It's amazing that it takes your whole body.
Yes.
Exactly.
Like you cannot ride a geometry with your hands.
Exactly.
No,
yeah.
But it teaches you, because that's what all of riding is. It's all riding with your whole body, and it teaches you you've got to do that.
Yeah, the hands are useless for that, and then
they play a role. They're part of it. They're
but more like
holistic.
Framing, not shaping.
It's holistic. It's the whole body. It's not the whole body without the hands. It's the whole body with the hands. It has to come
from the center.
But
you have to start with your pelvis, and then it has to emanate from the center to the periphery.
The legs and the energy and everything comes together. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and that, like, what I learned, it's like the focus, it's not what you think, right? So if you're just floating around on the top of a horse, you think, oh, I got to focus on, like, like, where's this, where's that? Like, you're focusing on the parts of the horse rather than on you and what you need to do to make that happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things that look really simple, but they're hard to do. I mean, I was surprised too when he did it with us. We were already a little bit more advanced than you were at the time. And it's like, oh my God,
we're a lot more advanced.
A little bit, but no. But I was surprised. It's like, oh my God, this is embarrassing. I should be able to do this, right? So, but yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. It's always the things that look easy. They're the hardest ones. Yeah, always be a little suspicious if it looks like it should be simple and easy. It's usually not. Or, like this, picking up the reins and letting the horse stretch forward, downward without losing balance, without speeding up. It's not an easy thing to do. It looks like, any training level rider does that, right?
Until you know. You don't know until you know.
And you know what, one of my old teachers told me that in the 1980s, like, this forward downward stretching thing is not as easy as it looks. And it's like, yeah, I get it,
Yeah.
And now 30 years later, it's like, wow, really, it's not that easy. It's like sometimes it takes a while until you actually understand.
To do it really well and correctly, not just fake the head and neck down.
No.
And
you gotta have a bridge. You gotta have a connected bridge. The horse has to be able to carry itself.
It's good core strength. Yes.
And you don't just get there from, like they always say, drop the reins.
Exactly.
Put your hands forward. Like all that will happen unless you there's like a pile of work that goes into the moment before you stick your hands out and the horse takes the bit, right? It's like,
right. And
that's the last thing. And so you get told to do that and you stick your hands forward and the horse either like runs away or falls on its hand, or sticks its head in the air. And then they're like, no, put your hands forward. And it's like that's not how you get there.
The horse stays where they are, that's the other thing that happens to people. So like one time out of 20, one circumstance out of 20, it works for a horse and rider when they say just give the reins and the horse will follow. Most of the time it doesn't. Most of the time you have to actually do some other things to help the horse, to give the horse the ability to be able to do that. Yeah.
A lot of other things.
Yeah.
And I use that now. Like, I mean, one of the things I like to do when I warm up kind of is start with nothing, like start with a little bitty nothing, like not even a stretch, like just up and down, up and down, up and down. And then as he sort of starts to warm up, ask for a little more. So it's kind of like adding and counting strides. So it's like, so we go from a little nothing trot to back and forth and back and forth. And as you do that wave, you start to ask for, okay, now working trot and then back, and then more trot and then back. And then now we're going to a lengthened trot and back to now we're starting to collect. And you can do that all the way back and forth from like piaffe or passage to extended gaits.
Yes, great tip.
Yeah, that's really, that's interesting.
We need to do a series, tips from Kristen,
Yeah,
series.
Not a trainer.
No, you don't have to be a trainer.
Fellow traveler of amateurs seeking happy times.
That's all we all are.
Yeah, but that's a great idea to start with this miniature transitions and then
great tip,
making them bigger. It's like a pendulum that swings just a tiny bit. And if you hit it just at the right time, the swing gets bigger, right? The amplitude gets a little wider, and that's basically what you're describing.
Yeah.
And it's also diagnostic, because the more you pressure the thing, the more like you start to get bracing, or you start to get like my horse will get kind of tight in the extensions. He's always loose and delightful in in the slow stuff. But so if you can kind of pull him back, and if he's tight in the extensions, then likely he's bracing here, like his under neck in the slow stuff. So it's like, so you're kind of, it's not like I do it and it's perfection. It's like I'm asking the question, and then I'm trying to gather the data that he's sending me about where he's at that day.
Right. It's true. Diagnostic. Every exercise is a diagnostic tool, and then it's also can be also a therapeutic tool. Yeah.
Okay.
So a couple of good comments and questions. So Linda Starnes says self-sufficiency sounds like the goal, so different from trainers that want you to depend on them for everything.
That's it.
Yeah, trainers are often very insecure. And they want, a lot of trainers say never teach the students everything you know, because then they won't come back, and then you're out of money and you're poor. So they keep you always a little down, a little below. And the ones that build themselves up into these gurus, then they always try to make you into little clones, like the little mini me, which means you'll always be smaller if you try to be somebody's clone.
Keep them under them. For us, it's more about leaving a legacy, and that legacy is leaving behind people that can go and carry on the body of knowledge and build upon it. And that's what we really want, not just, we want to perpetuate what we know. We want to pass on what we know to others because it helps. But we also want them to take that and build upon it and help the next generation, the next generation, and the next generation.
It's like science, right? Like what Newton said, I was standing on the shoulders of giants, right?
Yeah.
That's the old masters. We stand on their shoulders and then we mess around and we try things and we figure things out. Maybe we find a couple of interesting things. Like he was saying, I'm just walking along the beach, playing with little pebbles. And when I see one that I like, that looks pretty, I'll put it in my pocket. And that's kind of what writing is too. Like you learn from the old masters, then you do your own thing, you discover things. And if you feel like, oh, this works, this is interesting, I like this, put it in your pocket, right? And that's your new tool. And then, if you teach, then you pass it on to the students. But then every generation hopefully gets a bigger toolkit. That's kind of the.
And that's something uniquely that humans do. This is why we've progressed. Hopefully we can call this progression that we've done. But this is why we've progressed, that we can build upon knowledge and we can pass knowledge on to each other, whereas animals don't really do this except at an instinctive level. There's a little bit of teaching that happens, but not a lot. But this is something that, so each generation can build and build upon the body of knowledge. And this is an amazing thing.
And a writing teacher fears nothing more than a student who surpasses them. And that's why often
the typical, not us.
Not us, no. I mean, it's really
like Kristen. We want you to go to the top.
No, it's a compliment. If the student surpasses the teacher, then the teacher did their job.
It means you gave them the skills that enabled them to do that. That's amazing. Yeah.
Well, and let me just say, I have in no way surpassed you.
You're amazing.
Getting there.
You're amazing. You're on a peer level. I would say you're on a peer level where I feel like now I could come to you and say, Kristen, look at this and give me some feedback.
Yeah.
And because this is what we do for each other.
Yeah, exactly.
And I feel like you're on that level with us now.
Yeah, absolutely. You would have interesting things to say that would be useful to us.
That doesn't mean that you couldn't get feedback from us, but we could get feedback from you too, right? It becomes on the same level.
If I may just say, because I participate in the courses as one of the
assistant instructors.
Helper instructors. I find that there are other instructors in the group that Marcella is a professional. Her eye for people's seats is amazing. I look at that and I look at Carolyn is really great at picking apart things. And I look at that and I think, okay, that's not me. I tend to be I think of myself more as a fellow traveler. So when people are posting stuff that where I go, oh, I had that, or that's where I tend to be helpful. And I also I write books, right? Like someone asks a question and I Facebook. It's like Proust, right? So I write these humongous answers to things. So people are like, "Oh my," or something like, "Wow, you are so very detailed." But
the details are good.
To me, it's more like, yeah, I've been there. This is what worked for me.
I try to do that too.
That's how I teach too. I teach from my personal experience.
It makes it valuable if it comes out of lived experience. Yeah. It's much better than it's like, oh yeah, on this author says on that page, blah blah blah. But if you say, yeah, I've been there, done
this and this and this, no. Maybe good, maybe not.
Plus, if you say, I've been where you are now, and this is what I figured out, it makes it. To the student, it feels like maybe I can get there. Maybe I can get to where you are. If you've been where I am and you figured out a solution, maybe I can get there.
You'll put down when you as a trainer say to your students or whoever you're helping, yeah, I've been there too. This is what I did. Then they don't feel like, yeah, you need to do this. That makes you feel under them. This makes you feel like, okay, you're on the same learning path. You're just less far on the path, not as far along, and you can, there's hope, you can get there.
And just let me also say that, there's a lot of days I come in from riding and I think I shouldn't be telling anybody how to do anything, right? It's, I mean, because
feel
it's
like
a
that
way,
sometimes.
Every single one of us feel this way.
like
Sometimes.
the more you know, the more you're like, oh my God, I'm so humbled to the dirt. Like
Any
what I don't know.
professional that says they don't feel that way some of the time is lying. We
No.
all feel that
Oh, yeah,
way.
yeah.
That is part of the journey. That is part of this.
You know, one of the worst things when you're a professional is when you had one of those humiliating rides where you feel like I should just give up, and you know, and then you have to turn around and teach somebody. It's like, well, you know, you should sit like this, and you should, you know, and you feel like,
And you're like, what do I know?
uh,
What do I know? No, I can't even get my horse on the bit.
I know.
You know,
No.
you know,
And it happens. It probably happens to everybody.
it happens
you
to
know,
all
but-
of us. And many are probably not raw and honest about it, but I'm gonna be because that's what I do.
Mhm.
It happens to all of us.
It does, yeah.
And that's part of it. That's part of it. We all have to own up to it. This is part of it.
You just have to figure
Yes.
out how to do better next time. Mhm.
Yes, that's it. That's it. And it gets better with each time. You recognize it. You go, oh yeah, I had another one of those rides. Okay, it'll be better next time. You know, because you're there too. You know, when you have one of those rides, you're like, well, okay, it'll be better next time. Yeah. You know,
Yeah,
it's
well, at
not
this
the-
point, I'm having dreams, like actual dreams where I'm at a horse show and I'm like, I don't have my tack. Or
Oh
my
God, I get those
paperwork,
too.
And you know,
It's
and I
4
think, like,
minutes. 4 minutes
didn't I
before
sign-
your
didn't
ride
I
time,
sign
and you
up to
haven't even
ride the
rated
Grand
your
Prix
horse
test?
yet. I get those
I
words.
don't know when it is, and I can't make my phone work, and that's
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
that's where my psyche's at. So
It's like these school dreams, right? Like
Yeah.
you can't find the key to your
I can't
locker, or
remember
it's like,
my combination
you-
to my locker. Yeah.
or you have a test and you haven't studied all semester or something like that, right?
He-
I don't get those, but Shana's.
I get them. I still get them. I'm 52 years old. I still get dreams about being in high school. You know, it's funny.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, we should wrap it up pretty soon. It's been
Yeah.
2
Oh,
hours.
I know. Thinking that too, but
Yeah.
a couple of good comments. Let me see here.
So many good comments, you
Yeah,
guys.
and Thina says, yes, trainers do have a list of why you as a student are not achieving, never anything to do with a trainer's skill or ability to impart knowledge.
Yeah, yeah.
And Susan Heald says, I'm a 70-year-old beginner. My journey will not be anything like yours, but this session has really helped me see how I need to clarify where I want to go and what skills from my previous work life I can bring to helping me on the path here with the Ritters. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of, careers and jobs and education can help. Yeah.
It's not all for nothing. You learn many things along the way.
So Susan, I have so it's in the comments, but she said, I used to dream I was having to teach a class naked or going to give an exam for a course I forgot to teach. I have had the exact same dream about I realize, oh my goodness, I forgot to teach this course. I don't know where the students are and I have to go give them the exam. That's so funny.
Yes, it's the same thing. It's the same thing as my dreams. Oh my God, I have a class starting in 15 minutes. I haven't made it to the class at all. And there's a test and exam. And I have no idea even where the classes or where the combination is for my locker to get the books to study for the class. It's like, yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah. Same dream, just different. Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah, it's funny.
Here, Maria Bloman says, I've loved hearing your story, Kristen. I have a gray off-the-track thoroughbred who looks a lot like Griffin, plus an unraced thoroughbred mare and a cob-type Connemara cross. None of them your typical dressage horse. Listening to you is such an inspiration that every horse, regardless of breed, has massive potential if the rider is educated enough. Thank you. Yeah, that's a good way of summing it up.
Yep. I want to get through these comments and wrap it up.
I know. Wendy Bakarski says the lived experience is fantastic because you can recreate and not only ride the made horse. Exactly.
Yeah.
Allison has those dreams too.
Yeah.
And so Nicholas says, also a novice, 68 years old, and truly loving every minute, but feel that there just isn't enough time in my lessons for the questions and the understanding. That for me are the foundation stones from which I will become a more aware and hopefully better rider.
Yeah.
And have a relationship with my horse that is so much more than a twice weekly lesson. That isn't to devalue the lessons.
No, the lessons
at all.
are good.
My instructor is amazing, has been a tremendous support, but now I need to supplement those lessons. Tonight has helped me to clarify things. My goal is that I need to be part of the process, to take ownership of my journey, not just a sponge. I need to question and learn at a deeper level in and out of the saddle. I think that maybe the course will be instrumental in helping me achieve that goal. That's true. I mean, in a practical writing lesson, there is not a lot of time for theoretical discussion, right? You have to do things. But in the courses, we can lay it all out, right, in great detail, you know.
Yep.
Give you all the theory you need.
All the background, all the theory that
Yeah.
you need to be able to make use of those one-on-one lessons.
Yeah, Kristen, you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, just so that kind of loops back to sort of where I was going when I was jumping ahead of the timeline at the beginning, which is that I think that, you know, like even with lessons with Thomas, like it was, we didn't have, like, we had to deal with the horse and me in the moment. So it wasn't like, here's the framework, here's a systematic sort of thing. It was like mine was really an apprenticeship. Whereas I think now that you have the course, it kind of it steps you through things, but you can also move around in it. It allows you to kind of learn the pieces, you know, in a one-stop kind of way. And combining that with lessons with, like, if you're going to take the course, get ready to video yourself and share it, because that is it. Like that, I think people who do that get exponential, like massive benefit out of the experience. So, you know, get over feeling shy and get in there and ask questions, and like all of that support, I think gives structure, like a structure that for me evolved over a period of time, you know, kind of entirely through the practical. I think having both really elevates the whole thing.
Yeah, if you just have practical lessons, and the teacher can kind of insert little tidbits of theory here and there and try to kind of eventually create the picture. But in the course, you can do it in a very systematic way. It's like, this is what it is, you know, read it, study it, you know, and then learn it. And then you take that and apply it in the lesson, you know, see if you can test the theory against the practice, right? Write this exercise and see what you observe, basically, right? And then try to use your theoretical knowledge that you just gained to interpret the horse's feedback, you know, and the data that you're getting out of it. And then, you know, eventually it becomes this, do something, observe, think about it, come up with a solution or a way forward, implement that, observe the result. Is it better? Is it worse? Is it the same? And then, you know, eventually you have a huge database and lots of experience, and then it gets easier. But initially, it's an effort.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, one of the things that really gobsmacked me the first time you did, like, so the first time you ran this course in 2017 or whenever, so how much people's horses changed, like physiologically changed over the course of the course. Like I mean, I was expecting that people were going to get better. I was not expecting like how dramatically, like the people who really applied themselves, you know, to what they were doing, who integrated that with whatever they were doing outside of the course, like it was astonishing, like what they were able to do.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? People always say, well, you can't learn to write online or blah, blah, blah. But yeah, but the people who really utilize the course and do the homework and, you know,
actually did the exercises.
Write the exercises, come to the Q&As, do the hot seats. They progress pretty quickly.
Huge,
really amazing.
Huge transformation, actually. Sometimes more than we experienced with one-on-one lessons, which is a little bit humbling in a way that we could make more progress with people online than we could in one-on-one lessons in the same time frame.
Yeah, and you know, I used to teach all these clinics, and I would go to the same locations like 3, 4, 5 times a year. But if you go to a place like every 3 months or so, and you do 3 lessons with each student, there's a lot of time in between. Whereas with the online course, people can, you know, read and watch the tapes and stuff every day, and they can write the exercises every day, and they can ask me questions every day. That's a much more, in some ways, a much more intense connection than going there and teaching you in
It's
person
true.
every 3 to 4 months.
Because they didn't get feedback in between,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah, they were on their own, right? It's like, see ya in 3 months or 4 months.
Good luck.
You
Good
know,
luck
good
with
luck,
that.
you know.
Yeah.
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 So that was interesting. Some people progressed more in the online courses than in the
True.
clinics because there's this
True.
continuity there.
It's true.
And they can, if you want, you can post a video of yourself every day, right? And then one of us will say, okay, you know, here's a suggestion, try this, try that, and this is what I see.
And you're on the right track, you're not on the right track, this is what you need to change, this is what's better, and so on.
And
Yeah.
all the, of course, all the assistants, I mean, they're not me because they have additional influences, which
Like
means
you,
everybody sees something different. Everybody has their pet peeves. So it's
yes.
better than if it was just me or if it
Right.
was just my little
There's
clone.
two of
right?
us, but then there's also you, there's Carolyn, there's Marcella, there's Yvonne, there's Charlotte, and there's Catherine.
Yeah.
So all of us are giving feedback, all with our different perspectives.
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
this
every-
adds
yeah.
a whole rich body of knowledge.
Yeah, everybody has a different emphasis. I mean, Marcella is very much a seat kind of person, and I
Yes.
look often at the horse and horse gymnastics and the big picture and so on. So everybody brings their own thing.
Mhm.
And if you get suggestions from 3 of us, it's way better than if you take lessons from one person, right? Because you get a much broader perspective.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think that's a huge asset, actually. You know?
Amazing. If we had had that when we were learning to ride initially, I don't even know what, I mean, that would have been amazing. That's everything I would have ever wanted.
Maybe it will save us some
Everything.
time.
Oh God, I would think. I mean, that's all we're trying to do here is create something that we would have always wanted. That's all we're trying to do. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you wanted, I remember you wanted a university. You wanted your own university.
I
and
know,
there you
I
go.
always dreamed of that.
Ritter Dressage University is what I wanted. Yeah. Maybe I'll still rename it that someday, like you. Yeah.
Yeah, let's wrap it up though. I think it's
Yes,
people
let's
really-
wrap it up. Thank you, everybody. There were so many great comments and some questions we didn't get to, and so many great comments that we didn't read, or we read out loud, but I did read them. Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. Kristen,
Yeah, Kristen,
I love our conversations. I wish we could just go all night.
should do it more often.
We should. We
This
should.
is-
This is so
Yeah,
enlightening, inspiring. So many people found so much inspiration.
Yeah, Kristen and Marcella are the most senior students we have. Like we met Marcella in '98 in Eugene, Oregon.
She's been writing with us
Yeah.
since 1998.
And
Yeah.
of course she has her own path and she worked with other people and which enriches the whole
Enriches the
thing.
knowledge, yeah.
And yeah, and Kristen we met in 2009, right? So it's like 25 years. Oh my God. Quarter of a century.
Well, it's not that old. It's as old as
No,
Dylan.
not
15,
2009. It's
Oh,
older.
15, okay, no. 15, okay.
I was pregnant with
Close
Dylan.
enough.
Yeah, he's-
Dylan is the human benchmark of how long we've
that's
been
very
together.
true.
Exactly. You know, so yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it's been a long time. It's been great kind of watching your journey and your growth
Been
and
amazing.
yeah. Yeah, very
It's
different.
been an honor and a pleasure.
Oh, it's been really great. Yeah, it's been really great. We should
Mine too.
And we're
chat
proud
more
of it.
often.
Yes.
And I think the students in the courses would enjoy
I
it
think
too.
you would like that. Yeah, we'll try to figure out a way to make that work. I don't know. You're busy too. You have a very
I know.
busy schedule. But thank you very much. We're going to wrap it up with that. And big hug.
Yeah,
Bye.
big hug, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
You
you.
should come to Golga next year.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
coming to Portugal. Woman, you're coming.
So I actually tried. I actually proposed that we try to do a side trip to Portugal. And the thing was, we could not make it work. It was right before Christmas, and there was no way to make that work that would have been sensible.
Next time. Gotta come.
Golga's worth
Next
it. It's you'll enjoy it. The whole thing is
And of
unique.
course, with or without Golga, you're always welcome
Exactly.
here with us. Always. We'll talk
Yeah,
more
yeah.
about that, but always open.
Yeah,
No
always.
question.
Yeah.
Always open here.
All right.
Always welcome here. Okay. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much.